Now let's take a look at some of the methods that we can use to get started blocking in the geometry for our vehicles. And so this is Lesson 03 Start if you want to use this. It just has the image plane in here. So we want to get started building this. There are a few ways that we could go about this. One of the ways would be to use kind of a traditional box modeling method. So if you want to kind of create just a primitive cube in here, and you can just kind of scale it up and kind of put it into position. Go ahead and change my axis here. Okay, turn on our wireframe. And if you've done modeling for any amount of time, you've probably used box modeling any number of times. And so, we can come in here and add divisions to this. Okay, and the advantage of this is we get our volume that we can really quickly build out. We can get the kind of the width that we want. We can start to come in here and add divisions where we want these. We can kind of move these points over, kind of match the edges up with areas of the model. Okay, and so there can be advantages to this, but in many cases we'll be sort of working against ourselves when we try to create any different type of a topology or any different edge flow. Okay, so we can come in here and start to line this up. Okay, we can come in and just kind of extrude this out. And I've just got some of these tools dropped onto a shelf here. You can add yourself a little bit of resolution in here. Come in and you can start to modify that to match it up. Start to do some extrusions. So if we come in here on the side, okay, and you can start to come in and extrude that in to create the wheel wells and so forth. Okay, and then you start to break apart some of these faces, get rid of some of those, and you got to start merging some vertices together and so forth. You could also take the other approach where you start with a very skinny box here and then extrude out those fenders and things like that. Okay, so that's one way to go about it. And the advantage again is that you have this whole mass that you're working with, and you can kind of work this in. But you can see how we start to get a lot of these edges moving in different directions. It gets a little bit hard to manage. So you're going to have to start cutting this apart eventually. We could also use kind of a more of an edge-based approach. So for instance, we could pick out a prominent part of this. We could come in and let's go to polygons, and we just use our create polygon tool, and then come in and start to match up the geometry here. Go ahead and maybe take that edge and start to extrude it. Okay, and just do more of an edge-based approach where we're taking these edges and building this framework here. I'll kind of bring that down. Okay, let's rotate it so it's straight up and down. So you kind of get the picture here. Let's do one more here and then just push this straight out. So you could start with something like that. Okay. Now we would want to give it some width, so we'd want to probably move it out from the origin, assuming we're building this symmetrically. But then we could take this and start to extrude it to get the thickness of the fender there. Okay, make a division there maybe and start to extrude this in to get the thickness. Now we want to get the wheel wells, so we could come in here and start to delete some of these faces on the inside here. Okay, and then we could start to get our edges on the inside, start to extrude those down, and you can start to build it that way. Now this gives you a little bit more control over the specific pieces of your model, so we can have very fine control over where those points are, where the edges match up with, and you could come in and select those points, and again you have a lot of control over where those are actually lined up. So for instance, I could take the points on the top here. You can see where that geometry comes up and move those up. So a little bit different approach than working with from a box modeling standpoint. Now, another thing to think about when we're blocking this in is looking at this, you can see how we've got all of these facets, and a lot of them look like they're sort of connected together. So the question is, do we build this as one piece, or at least block it in as one piece, or do we build it as separate pieces? So in some cases, the separate pieces may actually work better because you're working with, a single piece here, and you don't have to worry about any of the other pieces. You don't have to worry about connecting things up. I would say leave it in one piece, at least for this project, for a little bit longer. So if I go ahead and turn on this example here, you can see that we already have a basic structure set up just using those techniques where we've gone in and created those edges and extruded them over. Now the thing is, this is one piece, so that if I need to change something, for instance, if I need to come in here and change this line where this is, I can just move this over, and because these are just connected by single edges, all of the pieces match up. So if I grab this point back here, and let's say this would be a separate piece and this would be a separate piece, but now it's one, I can select that point and move it, modify it. It's very simple. So the workflow that I use, at least in this case, was to create this sort of one-piece model, and then we want to go in and cut apart the different pieces, because really, even though it looks like a seamless piece, it has all of these facets and panels, and in a real constructed vehicle, you are going to have those panels. It's not going to be just a seamless vehicle. And this type of a vehicle gives us a lot more opportunity to add those divisions and seams and panels than, say, a seamless car that's very smooth surface. Okay, there may be long, large areas that don't have a panel break, but in this, we can come in and create our own panel breaks, and it goes along with the feel of the actual vehicle. It makes our lives easier because we can deal with those objects individually when we start to add resolution. But at this point, when we're just working on the shape, I find it to be a little bit easier to actually modify this from a low resolution standpoint of just having the pieces all together, and then we can go ahead and cut those apart. So it's up to you how you want to build that. It could be easier for you to just build the different pieces, but then you have to worry about them all matching up and everything that has to do with getting those pieces to work well together, which we can work out here with a single piece. Okay, so I don't know which way you normally like to work. Box modeling, more of an edge-based approach. You could use NURBS to draw curves in and start to loft pieces out and then convert those and maybe connect them together as well. There's a lot of different ways to actually make that happen. Okay, so one of the big things when working with these sort of models is the fact that we have a lot of planes that have detail on the planes that should be planar. So for instance, the side of this cockpit is at an angle in all three axes, but it has these windows extruded in. And so the challenge for us is making sure that the detail we add along these planar surfaces, which are not aligned to any axis, stay planar. And so we'll take a look at some of the methods that we can use to maintain that flatness on those different parts of the model while still being able to add all the detail we need. So we'll take a look at that in the next lesson.